Welcome to CTO Think, a podcast about leadership, product development, and tech decisions between two recovering chief technology officers. Here are your hosts, Don Vandemark and Randy Burgess.
Hey, Randy. What's up this week?
Lots of networking. I'm back on track after all of the illnesses and stuff.
Sure.
We welcomed 2 new kittens to the household, so definitely not as rough as a baby, human baby, but a little bit of a change of duties and a lot more high-pitched noises going around the house. In terms of tech and work stuff, I've been consulting with I've been talking to a lot of different parties that don't understand technology. As part of the networking, as part of trying to help different organizations I'm around. And it's one thing to tell people about what they need to do. There's definitely a blocker for people getting started with it. Like, I can talk to people about the technical problems they have and what they need to do to solve it. But those folks actually saying, let's do this, is a completely different thing. It has nothing to do with money, because I haven't given anyone an invoice or a proposal. It's more of, you told me the problem, I know how to solve it. Even if I do it for free, there's this something blocking people from actually wanting to go through with the change. So we'll have to see how it goes, because I could potentially have 5 or 6 projects in my lap to be working on stuff, but people just have to move forward. And in some cases, again, I'm not even selling work. I'm just telling them, this is what you got to do. And you might need someone else to do it, but people just are resistant to change. So even when they want it. So that's been my, the past 2 weeks or so. What's going on with you?
Oh, just got back from University of Florida. On Friday, we were both construction specialties and Aspire EDU were named again to the Gator 100, which is the top 100 fastest growing companies owned or run by University of Florida graduates.
Yeah.
It's
congrats on that again, by the way.
Well, thank you. It's something we're always proud of. I think in light of some reading I've been doing on growth and the dangers of growth for the sake of growth.
Yeah.
It's something I'm real proud of, but it's not something I'm going to chase.
Mm-hmm.
It's something we will probably be up for again next year, just because they use a 3-year period to make the rankings, and 2 of the 3 years are pretty good for both companies. We'll see. But yeah, it's something to be proud of. It's something that the thing I'm most proud of is that we do that while being profitable, 1, and 2, having pretty much bootstrapped both companies. So there's no outside investors. There's not any of that. So real happy with the growth of those 2 companies.
Well, I mean, I would say you could argue that the problem with public companies or VC funded companies is the growth demand that is placed on them. It raises, It may be like just unreasonable amount of pressure on companies. And I think it changes their decision making. So I really do agree with you that a bootstrapped, built from scratch without significant pressure from investors does make for a company that is probably more fun to run. I mean, it's riskier. I mean, you have to kind of sit through a period of time when money isn't good, and or when you don't have a lot of revenue, And I think, like you've said in the past about construction and specialties, it's been up and down in its history around growth and stuff.
Yeah,
So yeah, I mean, it's something to be really proud of when you don't just go and make a business of raising money and actually
yeah,
make a business that has customers and revenues as its basis for capital. So I
for
think
sure.
that's really something to be proud of.
And the two industries act differently too. 'Cause for Aspire EDU, we're just one of those slow burners. Continually growing, continually adding clients. And as long as we don't shed a lot of clients, that's going to lead to continual growth. Um, the biggest challenge we're facing upcoming is the fact that we did reach that point that we've discussed many times in the past of having to shift what we're doing with our database structures,
Yeah.
and that increased cost. But that cost didn't increase out of proportion of the growth we have, so it's fine.
Yeah.
It all makes sense. Whereas construction is, especially the business we're in, because new construction and maintenance are really kind of two separate things. But the maintenance end, cash flow
Yeah.
is usually the issue, because the people you have doing work want to be paid within probably 30 days at the most. Whereas the corporations you're doing work for, you don't see their money for 45, 60, 75 days.
Yeah.
So cash flow is always the issue. And that's why the growth has to be controlled. Because you grow too fast, that cash flow gets by you real fast, and then you're in trouble. So anyway, enough about the issues of growth. I think today, wanted to just dive a little into acronym soup.
Okay.
So we're recording this around lunch, so we'll have a little alphabet soup here. The different titles that technology executives have, and our view, and I'm going to be very clear, that's our view
Yeah.
of what each of those roles encompass, with the understanding that companies use these things interchangeably. We'll start with the big two. And the big two are the CIO role versus the CTO role. So Chief
Yeah.
Information Officer versus Chief Technology Officer. We specifically named this podcast CTO Think, mainly because that's kind of the roles we've played in the past,
Yeah.
or in the current. So let's talk real quick about what we think a CTO is, what we think a CIO is, and where somebody might want to aim to be depending on their strengths.
Sure. If my definition of a CIO is someone that is more concerned with data. Now, I've never seen a CIO at a small company. Like, there's always, so to me, it's a big company that has information coming from all sorts of sources. Some of it's self-generated, some of it is purchased on a research basis. So, they don't care about the tools, they care about the actual data and how the company is using it, protecting it, selling it, perhaps. Like, that's what I would think a CIO role is more focused on.
Sure. So the only issue with that definition, and we'll get around, or we can get into it now, is that with the rise of data science, there's a new role coming out called a CDO, a Chief Data Officer. So I think you're generally right. The I in CIO stands for information. So that's all the information that's coming in. It's all the data that's coming in and going out, and how that's managed and controlled. It's more I also see it as maybe a role where that executive is in charge of explaining the results to the other executives within the company.
Yeah.
And again, we're going to get real. A CDO could do that too if you have one, but it's more about taking all that information, making sense of it, and distributing that knowledge to the rest of the organization.
So is a CDO in charge of all the vaporware?
No, it's a CVO, Chief Vaporware Officer.
I mean, the data, I'm not sure. Well, this could go a whole different podcast if we talk too much about it. But a lot of the stuff in the CDO category, I mean, it's machine learning, it's data analysis, data visualization. Which, I mean, I guess you could have someone in charge of all that, but it's still a lot of it's experimental, not done very well. You got to be a really big company, I would think, to have a CDO. But it's probably
really, I was going to say really big or really focused on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're now your main business is driven around data.
Yeah.
And you have your CIO maybe more in charge of every other aspect of the organization outside of the product, I guess is the best way to put it. The other thing, and I think we've morphed this segment into talking about CIO versus CDO instead of talking about CTO. But the other aspect is with GDPR. It's certainly beneficial to have a person in charge of the data. There is a defined role within GDPR called a data protection officer.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that might lead to where you do see a very specific person in charge of the data, whether they're called a chief data officer or a data protection officer, as the GDPR calls it. That allows one person to be solely focused on the protection of the data, the usage of the data, the proper usage of the data. Whereas a CIO has that as part of their purview, but also has, to some degree, the systems that work with that.
So you mentioned product. What's the difference between a CTO and a CPO, Chief Product Officer?
Sure. So that's almost we're going to go into all the different acronyms. That's almost like asking what's the difference between a product owner in Scrum categories versus a project manager. The chief product officer would be the person in charge of the products. How are we? What are we putting out there? What are we at? What's on our roadmap? Things like that. The chief technology officer, and we'll flip over there for a few minutes. And this is why I think you see that as the role that comes up first in all the different in smaller companies. The chief technology officer is the person in charge of the technology at the end of the period. That's it. They are responsible for all the systems that your business runs on. They're responsible for making all those decisions or providing the non-technical reasons for the decision so that somebody else can make those decisions. That's really where I see a chief technology officer is. They are literally driving the technology. Now,
it depends
depending on your company, right?
Yeah,
because you could also have a hardware company, and maybe they're in charge of the hardware.
Well, so to me, like the CTO at a tech firm where technology is the product, like a SaaS type of company.
Sure.
That CTO is essentially a product officer. Almost every time you look at their role and what they're doing, they are doing what a CPO would do. If you had a CTO at Construction Specialties, they would definitely be in charge of the tech supporting your product, which is not tech based. So that would be the biggest difference, I would think.
Well, and that doesn't exclude those responsibilities from a CTO
No,
at a SaaS shop, right? So yes, they are the chief product officer at a SaaS shop, but they're also in charge of all the technologies.
yeah,
They're in charge of supporting everything that comes in. I know that's my role, is not only to kind of act as the product officer to some degree, but also the person making sure everything runs properly.
then I would say that a product officer typically, like you said, they're more about the roadmap and where the product's going. I would say a CTO is concerned with the build and maintenance
Sure.
related to that. I mean, everything blurs, but when I meet product people, they talk about technology as it fits the user experience, as it fits the marketing goals and message. They work a lot with the marketing team, the sales team, more than a CTO typically does. And so
Right.
when people, like, I've kind of talked to people about product development roles, and they're like, have you done all this other stuff related to marketing? I'm like, no. Like, I've worked with the people that do that, but I don't do that myself. And so they were like, oh, well, we need someone with that level of marketing experience. And so, but they had a technical product and they didn't have anyone on their team that knew the tech. So they're trying to find
Right.
that CPO role is kind of like in the middle of those two. And usually when I meet CTOs, they are worried about technology and the people that they're putting in place to manage that technology. And that's, they're definitely working to solve the problems that the company is trying to do on the sales marketing side, but that's just not where they live. Whereas a CPO lives on, kind of straddles a fence, I would say.
And I think we'll interject here in the middle just to repeat again. If you're applying for one of these positions, make sure you read the job description.
Yes.
because for the most part, they're going to be defined by the company. If you look on Wikipedia for the definition of all these things, there are fine distinctions, and as we prepared for this episode, I was looking at them and I'm like, there doesn't sound like there's a big difference here. So it's important for you to have an understanding of what is expected of you if you're applying for a position like this at a company.
Yeah.
So the other one I can think of, and that came up in research, was the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer. So similar to part of the responsibilities we talked about a Chief Data Officer, the CISO is responsible for the security of the technology of the information for the most part. So making sure that you are certified and protected by all those different processes, the ISO certifications and things like that. You're following all those processes. You've got your technology locked down. It's a very specific role. That one is probably the most specific role. It is out of all of them, it's the one that has a singular focus that you can't really genericize very much. It is, at the end of the day, it is about security.
And in a way,
password security to hardening of hardware.
Yeah, and in a way, it's probably better to have that person kind of on the outside looking in, because that's where your threats typically come from. If you're a big company with a high value of data, you definitely need to be worried about how that data is accessed and possibly distributed by people in the company, but in a way you want them auditing from the outside of the team, of the tech team, pen testing, trying to hack, kind of setting procedures and policy that may not be convenient for the tech team, but needs to be in place for the security of that kind of stuff. So
Sure.
if you're a big company and can afford a chief security officer, that would be that's definitely a role that I think should be on the outside of a CTO responsibility in a way, if you're a company big enough to do that.
Yeah, and that would be interesting to see who. So according to Wikipedia, it's split between the security officer reporting to the CIO,
Mm-hmm.
or reporting to the CEO, or reporting to the board of directors. It looks like it's about a third across the board. So I think there's arguments for both. You certainly have the argument that if it reports to the CIO, then they can work together to get everything locked down. But there's also the potential for abuse in that situation where the CIO could just bury any results he doesn't like from the CIO.
Yeah.
So it's probably best to have it report to the CEO or the board of directors, but that in that case, there's going to be tension there.
Yeah.
And that's just something to manage around. So out of all those, I think both of us, for the most part, have served CTO roles, mainly because the companies we've worked for are smallish.
Yeah.
They need somebody in charge of the technology, whether that is as part of the product or whether that is just running the company. So it is. Do you see that you'd prefer to be in a company that where you could serve as more of a CIO, or does CTO kind of fit more what you're, based on what we've been talking about? Does that fit more what you're interested in?
Man, I haven't thought about that. Probably, to me, I wouldn't be at a company probably so big that there would be a CTO and a CIO on the same staff. But
Right.
I would probably say I'm still a CTO type. I still very am much concerned with the tools rather than just the data.
Sure.
Because I don't, yeah, like I spend a lot of time with construction and building and maintenance related tasks, and or I mean, I don't want to take this. I do have a subject I want to talk about on all of these chief roles, but
Sure.
but yeah, I guess to wrap this up, I would still probably go after CTO or chief operations, which is a whole different area maybe.
Yeah.
But I guess the point, the thing, this is interesting because I forgot I talked about this with some people. I was talking in a chat room I have with some folks I used to work with, and someone brought up a scenario they were in where there is a security issue in the code, and they have a CTO so there's two different developers on the team that disagree strongly with how the security issue is being coded, like how they're solving this problem.
Sure.
And one person is kind of like, we don't need to change anything, and the other person is, concerned about the risk. And he said, and so basically what he said was, when we bring this issue to the CTO, he just backs off because there's human confrontation involved, and he shies away from that. And they also made a comment that a while back there had been a meeting about how to set the values of the company and how to what kind of company they want the people to be, and that the CTO just skipped the whole meeting. And the thing that I answered was, if you have a role of chief in front of your name, that's about people. Even if it's chief technology or chief information, your job is like a CTO at a, as the company gets bigger, if you're a 3-person company, sure, your focus is tech. But as you get to hire more people, like chief means manage people to me. And if you want to be just technology, then be director of engineering or something. But chief to me is about managing people and the problems that come with that. Because people don't get along.
Yeah, it is.
People have different personalities. People have different opinions. And your job, if you shy away from that kind of stuff, don't call yourself, like, get out of the chief role, because that's what a chief role is. So it was just kind of, I just boldly just said, that's BS, like that person isn't a chief of anything. So I think that's probably the strong like, despite whatever chief data, chief information, chief tech, it's still about managing people that manage those things. And maybe your expertise is the tech, but you have to manage the people so that all that stuff gets done. And that's what a chief role is. I mean, as you get to a bigger company, putting your hands on the tools as a chief role is kind of like unheard of. You're in meetings a lot. You're talking to people. You're managing projects by setting priorities and telling people like what the focus is. Solving disputes, like politics, the kind of the dirty side of it. It doesn't really matter what your TIDP, whatever middle acronym letter is. It's about people management to me. But
yeah, it absolutely is. And being willing to admit your weaknesses among that knowledge that you need, and bring in people to help fill those weaknesses as well. So as far as what role I feel most comfortable with, you mentioned COO as far as just operations, getting stuff done. That's the role I serve for construction specialties. And I don't think, as a company grows larger, I think I would find myself having to deal with things in a CTO role that I don't like to deal with. Networks, hardware, things like that just is not where my focus has been. My focus has always been about product and information and things like that. So if I ever ended up at a company that was large enough to have all those roles, I don't think CTO is where I would end up, because those things just are not my strength. And yeah, I could bring in people to be in charge of those roles, but I think as you get larger, the CTO is the one-stop shop for things like hardware.
I mean, going back to your question, what would I want to be called? When people have asked me, like, what would you need? Like, recruiters ask me this, and some of the other companies that I've talked to, they're like, what would you want your title to be? And I always say, I don't really care. It's about like marketing. If you're trying to raise money, what do you want the investors to know my title to be? Because what do they care about it? If you need me to be introduced to potential clients that want to talk about the tech or the product, what do you want my title to be to them? That's what matters more. Usually when I'm in a company, I hire people that I consider peers more than I even hire people that I would say work under me. So I really don't care. Sure. It's like, it's that internally the title. Usually I guess I would say, if I work at a company where the title really matters for people working together, then I'm probably at too big of a firm for what I personally want to work. So, but it does matter on the outside, because different parties externally do have, like, they want to have a sense of where you fit into this company I'm looking at working with or investing in. So to me, it's a marketing thing for the outside world more than anything else. It does help. It can help you and hurt you on the hiring market because when people see CTO on my resume from past jobs, they think, oh, you'll never work as a developer. Like, would you? And I'm like, sure, because that's what that's what I did when I was a CTO. So in a way, it's like having that title. I mean, I had that title really young, and it threw people off when I was looking for, like, I just want to be a coder right now. And they're like, really? You already had a CTO role? And I was like, yeah, but I left there so I could get hands-on skills. So, but at the end of the day, I just don't I don't care. I mean, I work as a CTO for almost everybody I work with and talk to about tech. I do this. I still have the issue of thinking about the tech from a short-term perspective, long-term perspective. Can you maintain the solution? Can you afford it? Are you chasing something just because of marketing terminology that's popular? Do you have the ability to manage the people side if I'm not around? Teaching people how to do tech, like all that stuff is what a CTO does. I do that all the time. I don't really give a crap if I have a title around it, but again, it's important to define for other people so they know what you're doing, what you're about, I guess.
Yeah, and that's a fair statement and a good point to bring up, is that at the end of the day, the what goes on the business card isn't super important to you or I. We have healthy egos, but that's not one of the things that drives either of our egos. So yeah.
What are our titles for the podcasting?
I'm the CEO, the Chief Editing Officer.
What am I? The Chief Posting? I'm the CPO, the Chief Posting Officer. Which all I do is upload a file. I have transcribed. I did.
There you go.
But
so you're CTO on top of it.
Yeah. But I wouldn't say I do it enough to really get a title out of it. Chief Talking off co-chief talkers is all I can think.
Yeah. So I think we've hit all the different acronyms I could come across with when I was looking to see what different ones are out there. You brought up one that mattered in all of that, which was the Chief Product Officer. We didn't talk about the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer, but that's not really what we do. But you're going to be involved with a Chief Marketing Officer a lot.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in the Chief Product Officer role. So at the end of the day, those C-level titles, the C-suite titles, usually only apply at larger corporations or corporations, as you said, that need to show they have those roles for important purposes.
Yeah.
Just for outside appearances. At the end of the day, the definition comes down to the individual company.
Well, I'm going to go into my new role of Chief Cat Photography Officer. That's my house title now, because I have so many cute kitten photos that I have to post to the world. So
you're the Chief Instagram Officer as far as that goes.
No doubt. And I've tried to limit it to one per day, but damn, I have so many good ones. I just want to keep posting. And I know I'm losing followers because I'm probably only posting cat photos, but I just don't care. It's just what I have to do.
Hey, that's why you got two new ones, because you like the cat so much.
Exactly.
So. All right, so I think we've beaten this one to death. Anything coming up in the next week or so that you're working on?
Yes. So, so we, because, so on our other podcast, This Old App, we talked with David Rogers about
Yeah.
Vue and React. And I've been trying to figure out which of these two platforms do I want to work with? Because I have some work coming up, short contract work where I need to utilize something other than jQuery for what they had. Like I need to kind of redo a little bit of the front end. And talking to David, man, like I was really big on React again. And then talking to David made me like, I think I want to do Vue. I feel like, so I'm just caught in the middle. So I got to still figure out what I'm going to do for this front end piece. I'm probably going to use Material Design for the kind of bootstrapping style, but I need to employ something. I don't think it's not a single page app. I'm not doing a single page app. I want to use a framework for some of the pieces that need a little bit more, front side power. And I don't want to use jQuery to do it. I want to use something that's a little more structured, I guess, which I could say.
Sure.
And I think Vue fits that versus something like, I feel like that's some more maintainable compared to this, how much React is changing still. But talking to David was actually a problem for me because I'm like, oh, I kicked Vue off for a little bit and now I'm looking at it again.
I was going to say, David's a persuasive guy. So.
Well, he wasn't trying to be. He was just kind of...
No, not at all.
He's knowledgeable. He had a very reasoned reason for why they chose Vue. And I was like, man, I agree with all of that. That's actually pretty like good reasoning. So, yeah. And I'm still thinking a lot about the Chasms project that we've talked about on This Old App more.
Yeah.
And I still feel like it has legs and I need to choose a front end for that. And I'm debating Vue and React on those two as well. So otherwise, just working and still exploring different projects and job opportunities, stuff like that. That's pretty much all I'm been up to.
Yep. And I think I go through these waves, and right now I'm back on the Microsoft Graph wave of trying to get some of the tools we use within Construction Specialties hooked up to the Microsoft Graph API. I've got a Zapier integration that has 9 different steps, and each of those 9 steps, I would say 8 of those 9 steps can be done within the Microsoft world. So they can all use the Microsoft Graph. And since we've switched from, hodgepodge of tools to where I moved us, and we've talked about this, I moved us to Microsoft tools, Office 365 tools. I'm back on that train of, okay, I committed to this. Let's dig a little bit more into, can I use the tools we committed to? Like we use for creating work orders, we use a Google form.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Microsoft has that same functionality. So it's one of those things where I'm just playing with little tools and seeing what we can do and really educating everyone else on what's available so that they can go and create tools as well.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I actually need I would like to know more about Office 365 and all that good stuff. I don't I'm just used to G Suite, Google Google for your domain or whatever the heck they used to call it. I'm used to all of those tools. Although I still have this issue where I save half my stuff in Dropbox and half of it in G Drive, and I'm like, why am I doing this? But it's like Dropbox is great for my storage, but it's not good for sharing. It's just it doesn't have, Like it doesn't make any sense. Google Drive has the worst search of any storage mechanism I've ever had. Yet it's the easiest for sharing with people everywhere else. And
Right.
Dropbox is better for my own stuff and search, but people can't seem to. Anytime I try to share Dropbox stuff with people, they never can figure it out. And
it's pretty annoying to get a Dropbox link. I will say.
I don't know why. I mean, it works for me, but no one can figure it. Like, I don't know. Anyway, off topic.
Yeah.
So have a good week. We will talk again soon.
Sounds good.
Later.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to the CTO Think podcast. Show notes and previous episodes can be found on our website at ctothink.com. Reviews on Apple iTunes are always appreciated and help promote the show. Patreon contributions help us to produce episode transcripts, which allow people that are deaf or hard of hearing to access the show. If you have feedback, ideas, or want to be a guest, please email us at hello@ctothink.com. Show music is Dumpster Dive by Mark Wallach, licensed by premiumbeat.com. Voiceover work by meganvoices.com. You'll hear from us next week.